What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Ask the Expert live Q&A. Hope you guys are having a great week. Hope everything is going super well in your neck of the woods. As you guys join us, let us know you're here. Let me know you're here by saying hi, and let me know where in this wide world of fence that you're from. Always like saying hi to you guys. See you guys every week and answer any and all of your fence questions. To begin this, I'd like to thank Stain and Steel Experts once again for sponsoring the live broadcast. The Stain and Steel Experts is a brand of fence stain and deck stain that we like using a lot in my business, mainly because it's a safer product to use than a lot of the other oil-based stains out there. It's a low VOC, which basically means it's a little bit healthier to work with. You're not worried about guys. I'm not worried about the guys breathing in harmful fumes, worried about what happens if it gets on their skin and they don't wash it off right away, that sort of thing. They've got a lot of good things going on over there. I really, really enjoy their products. Caleb and Ashley and the rest of the team there are super great to work with. I can't thank those guys enough, both for their friendship and for sponsoring the live broadcast here on the YouTube channel. Also, Caleb and Sean and I and a few other industry experts have all got together, and we're putting together a Stain and Steel University and Fence Academy coming up. Actually, just about a month from now, isn't it? So it's January 21st now. So February 25th and 26th is when the University and Academy are going to be going on. I'm super excited to speak on Thursday about any and all things marketing related. So if you guys have marketing questions, if you guys are attending and have marketing questions, let's leave those in the comments below. I'd love to talk to you about that today, but then also put together a presentation for you guys that you guys can find helpful and help your guys' business out as much as I can. For more information on the Stain and Steel University and Fence Academy, check out the link below. I believe it's the first link. You guys can click on that, learn a little bit more about the university and academy, and also sign up to attend. It's completely free, which I think is amazing. Just looking at the other speakers that are going to be there. Now, I went to Stain and Steel University 2020. They're just outside Nashville, actually the same place that we're going to have it this year. And I was blown away by just the amount of content. Now, that was a one-day show, and Caleb and his team put it on. It was an amazing show, and I was blown away that it was a free convention, a free university. I've been to a lot of paid trainings. Pre-pandemic, I'd like to go to 3 or 4 a year just to try to better myself, try to gain as much knowledge as possible, and learn as much about the industry as I can. You know, I don't know who said it, but something to the effect of the day you stop learning is the day you start falling behind, right? So I attended last year and I was blown away. I attend events like this a lot, and they can get a little spendy. You know, they can be. They typically start around $400 or $500 a person. They get significantly more expensive than that, depending on where you're going and what they're talking about. So the fact that Caleb and his team can put this on for free, and now Sean's teamed up to handle the fencing side as well, I'm pretty blown away with that. So, guys, do yourself a favor. If you're in the fencing industry or staining industry and you're available February 25th and 26th, I think you owe it to yourself and to your customers to attend and try to find that one or two really, gigantic nuggets of information to take away that can really change your business. All right, let's get to saying hi to everybody. What do you know? Fence King's here. Fence King's here every single week. Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, a lot of you guys are here week in, week out, and really help me with content for our live Q&As, and I appreciate that a lot. Fence King is absolutely fundamental to this. And actually, so Fence King and I have both been brought on to the Mr. Fence Academy team. Sean's putting together, he has an academy, and he has a really awesome team put together there that we're all trying to work to help to elevate the fencing industry as a whole, both with new and existing fence companies that are really looking to elevate their game and be at the top of their game. So I'm incredibly humbled to be a part of that, along with the Fence King. So I really appreciate that too. Well, the Fence Prince is here. Good afternoon, Joe. Fence Prince is here. I love it. Welcome, Dylan. Fence King and Fence Prince. I don't know what I've done to deserve such high regard that both of you have showed up to my YouTube stream, but I appreciate it. That's right. We'll be at Teachers Lounge February the 25th. I'm looking forward to it. What I'm looking forward to probably the most about the training is I'll be speaking at it, but that interaction, right? I always seem to learn the most from just meeting other contractors and talking about, what's going on in their business, what they see currently in the marketplace, and how they're adapting to it has been a huge topic of conversation lately. But just seeing, the different processes. Fence King shared, I believe, actually, it was in the private academy group, shared a tidbit that he uses personalized thank you notes. And I tell you what, we've been doing that for probably the last year or so. And you want to talk about making an impressive difference to your business. I think that's amazing. I'm super glad to see that those guys are doing it as well down in Louisiana. But yeah. Anyway, so what I take away from these. So I say all that to say the personalized thank you was a little golden nugget I'd gotten at one of these conventions and trainings a couple of years ago. It was from a sales trainer who actually, so he did a little bit differently. He did a handwritten thank you note after every appointment. Now, he was in a different industry, so he would have, 1 to 2 sales appointments a day, to where at the end of every appointment, he would pull around the corner, write a handwritten thank you note that's personalized. Hey, John, appreciate you having me out to look at your project. Wish you the best. Let me know if I can, be of service to you and your dog, Silver or whatever. Let me know if you have any questions. And I sat there, and I can remember it clearly because I was taking notes, and I just sat there and thought about that. I like to think about it from the customer perspective, right? So if I was having, a roof done at my house or this siding redone on my house, how big of an impact would it have made if a contractor had written a handwritten thank you note? So, however long mail takes, 2 to 3 days later, I'd gotten a handwritten thank you note in my mailbox, just thanking me for my time for the appointment. That proposal goes to the top of the list, right? Now, there's other considerations. There's always pricing to consider and timelines, but if all things were equal, that handwritten note would absolutely be the difference between that bid getting the job versus everybody else. So I was blown away. We started doing it. And it's not something I've really talked about. It's just something we started doing, right? And then I saw Fence King's post today, and I was like, oh, great minds think alike, right? Those little personal touches can make all the difference in your business. I'm going to struggle with this name. Bigger? I don't know. Hello again, Joe. When setting Postmaster posts in concrete, what works well to hold them in position while the concrete sets up? Well, so the posts actually do a pretty fair job of keeping themselves in. So one tip, I guess I would give you would be typically, so we get the post set exactly where we want them. We get them plumb in both directions, make sure they're exactly where we want in line, and then we typically tap the top of the post. So maybe we drive them just a little bit deeper, check the plumb all around again, and then set the concrete. But most of the time, the concrete is going to be enough to hold that post nice and plumb, as that concrete cures. Because, the concrete's already pretty thick. It's going to do a pretty good job of holding everything together. But typically, we would tap the top of the post. We'd drive them down into the hole just a little bit more, just give them that little bit extra sticking power. So hope that helps. I like to hear that you're using the Postmaster steel post. Now, there's other purpose-built posts. There's a Lifetime post and Gregory post, I believe, but Postmaster is a brand that we use. It's by Master Halco. I like them a lot. It's kind of the original purpose-built post that all the rest of them are oddly similar to. I'd say they're very similar, except for 1 or 2 changes, just enough to get around patent infringement, I would guess. Matthew Fosenberg, welcome. Hey, Joe, Matt here from the San Francisco Bay Area. Matthew, how in the world are you? Matthew's another returning guest or returning viewer here on the YouTube channel. I appreciate you guys a lot for tuning in each and every week. I would have to think weather in the San Francisco Bay Area is significantly better than in the Midwest. Although right now we're a bit of a heat spell. A bit of a heat wave is blown through. I think today was 52 or 53 for a high. And everyone no one knows what to do with themselves. They're walking around in T-shirts, and you'd think it was, mid 90s in some, June or July here. But anyway, welcome, Matthew. I appreciate you tuning in. Guys, if you're joining us for the live stream, pop in and say hi. Let me know you're here. Let me know where you're from. I always like hearing from you guys and hearing where in the fence world you guys are from. I want to tell you guys a story. Well, let's say hi. I'm going to pause my story here and say hi to people as you come in. What is up, Rob? Rob Art's in the house. Welcome to the live stream. I appreciate you tuning in. Guys, if you have fence questions, drop them in the comments below. But until then, I'm going to tell you a little story, like a cautionary tale, you might say, for all the other fencing contractors out there. I made a mistake. And I think it's a mistake that a lot of you guys can relate to. So we were building an ornamental fence, this one was aluminum fence, but the subdivision, the HOA's requirements required a masonry column I want to say it was every 16 feet. Actually, I know it's every 16 feet because every other post had to be a masonry column. We don't do masonry, so we don't have masonry craftsmen on staff, so we had to hire a contractor. We had a contractor lined up, and then it was pandemic season, and for one reason or the other, the contractor couldn't perform. Well, so what happened was a few of their guys had tested positive, and then they were out, and then a few other guys had to quarantine, and one thing led to the other, and they just got significantly further and further behind. They weren't able to start the project. But we had a project to do. We had a fence to build, right? So we found another masonry contractor who came recommended, and we checked a few of his other referrals, and they checked out. We asked the standard questions. We need a W-9 and we need a certificate of insurance. We need to make sure you're insured. And so the W-9 came in straight away. Thought that's good. He said, hey, but the certificate of insurance, I don't have it. I can get it to you. I'm going to have my agent reach out to you. So, okay, that's fine. Well, the project had to start really quick. We were under a deadline to start this project. So we let the project start without having the certificate of insurance. And I want to tell you guys a story because I want to be transparent. But then the other part of me knows that I preach on this channel about insurance, about making sure your contractor is insured by having a certificate, by verifying the certificate. And I didn't follow my own advice. I didn't. And this story might be the reason why I preach this so much. We didn't ask for a certificate. The project commenced, and I won't go into details on the project. It got finished. Had to get reworked a few times, but it got finished, and the customer was pleasantly surprised. We love the work and all that. A few months go by, and we get the bill. I had forgotten about it, to be completely honest, because my mind chases rabbits down rabbit holes, and if I don't see a bill, I'm not thinking about it. So anyway, a few months went by. We got the invoice. And I said, you know what? We do need I went into the contractor's file and saw that we had the W-9. We don't have a certificate of insurance. So we requested a certificate of insurance. And he sent us a certificate of insurance for this year, for 2021. We said, no. We need the 2020. This project happened in 2020. We need 2020 insurance. And so rather than sending us his certificate of insurance for 2020, he had his lawyer send us a demand for payment, threatening a lawsuit for breach of contract. I thought that's kind of odd because we had an agreement that you were going to perform the work and that you were insured, and then come to find out, not insured. So lesson learned there, right? Always get your certificate of insurance up front. Make sure they are current and double check them with the agent. The certificate of insurance always has the agent's the issuing agent's information. I believe it's in the top right-hand corner. I'd have to go check one, but you can always call the agent to verify the policy is enforced, because that's another thing you see. We haven't had this personally, but you hear stories out there about contractors that get a certificate of insurance just long enough to get that one certificate, and then they cancel the policy. They make a bunch of copies of the certificate, but they cancel the policy, and they just send those blanket certificates out. Well, so always get a certificate, and when you do get a certificate, follow up with the insurance agent, make sure it's enforced. So now basically what's going to happen is we're going to be on the hook for paying for his workman's compensation insurance. So we've talked to our agent and said, well, we messed up. I'll be honest about it. We screwed up. We didn't demand a work comp certificate before he got started. So what do we do? And the agent said, well, you're going to have to pay the work comp rate based on what you paid him. So we're going to have to eat that, which is a good lesson. So always get your certificates of insurance and make sure that they're enforced before you let a contractor start work for you. What is up, Jason Reed? Middle Tennessee here. Well, Jason, I tell you what, welcome. If you're a fencing contractor or standing contractor, you ought to come visit us in Nashville here in about a month, February 25th, 26th. As you can see the banner scrolling right along the bottom of the screen here. We'd love to see you there. Probably, guys, so let's talk about this for a second. the contractors that are going to be at the university and the Standing Seal University and Fence Academy, I'd like to do a meetup one of the evenings where kind of called it like a fence fan meetup, maybe something like that. So I've got a speaking engagement now on Wednesday afternoon and evening, while I'm in Nashville for a private. Actually, I'll tell you what it is. So Sean, Mr. Fence Academy, that Fence Prince and I and several others are on the team, the academy team there. Sean's putting together a private event, a summit, really, a learning summit for those in his academy. And so on Wednesday, I'm going to be spending time with them in a private setting, talking about marketing and answering all of their questions. So Wednesday night's probably out. I'm going to be giving them as much of my time as I can, try to help those contractors as much as possible. But so let's talk about a meetup, probably either Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. I fly home Sunday morning. So we could do a meetup Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night. I'd love to meet you guys and meet you guys in person, put some faces with the names. And just have general, we'll follow procedures and protocols, social distancing and whatnot. We'll be responsible about this. But yeah, I'd like to meet up with you guys that are going to be at university, the Standing Seal University and Fencing Academy. Benny, what is up? What are your thoughts on putting 10-foot 4x4s 4 foot deep in the ground for a 6-foot fence? So you've got me there. I like that idea. Instead of concrete, you insert 2 8-inch long PVC pipes going all the way through the 4x4 to keep it in place. So we're talking about vinyl, it sounds like, if we're putting a PVC pipes. All right, so I'm a little confused. So we're going 4 foot deep. Makes sense. 6 plus 4 is 10. But instead of concrete, you insert 2 8-inch long PVC pipes going all the way through the 4x4 to keep it in place. So how is this being affixed into the ground? I'm a little lost here. I'm probably missing something that's incredibly obvious, but why don't you guys let me know if you have ideas? Instead of concrete, you insert 2 8-inch long PVC pipes going all the way through the 4x4. So I'm guessing, 2 8-inch long PVC pipes, I'm guessing they're horizontal. So if you have your fence post, you have your 8-inch PVC pipes going all the way through to keep it in place. So then are you talking about backfilling it with dirt? The hole, that's what it sounds like, because you're obviously digging a hole that's 4 foot deep. So if that's what we're talking about, I'd prefer setting those in concrete. It's just going to make for a longer lasting post. And this, I don't want to start a debate. There are always debates on concrete versus, filling with concrete versus filling with gravel, versus tamping the dirt back in versus dry packing. If we get into concrete, there's several different ideas there. Sean, Mr. Fence and Mr. Fence Academy is really big on dry packing, and it's actually something I'm pretty excited to learn about. So I'm actually going to be attending the Fencing Academy portion as a fence company owner. I'm excited to learn more about dry packing concrete. But you said instead of concrete. So it sounds like we're talking about then just filling it with dirt. I'm not sure. I would prefer to see you use some concrete. I know that adds to the cost, but it makes for a longer lasting post. It really does. Unless I'm missing something. If I'm missing something, let me know. I like that you're going 4 foot deep. I mean, that's going to make for an incredibly strong post. And you see, and let's preface this by saying it depends where in the world you are, right? Here in the Midwest, our frost line is 6 to 18 inches deep. So 24 inches deep is kind of where we go. As you get into the northern climates, obviously it gets quite a bit deeper. There's some contractors in northern Canada that go 6 to 8 foot deep. So it probably depends where in the world you are. But I like that you're starting off with 4 foot deep. You're off to a good start. I would like to see that hole filled with something substantial. That being said, how many of you guys saw yesterday's video where we talked about the expanding foam product? I was somewhat surprised at that. If you guys saw the first foam video that was early 2020, I think May of 2020, possibly, I tested the Sika Pro Select foam with very disappointing results. All right. I say it constricted. Others say it contracted or shrunk. I think everyone understands what I'm talking about. It was this big, and then it went to this big. It got smaller, right? So it left a gap in the hole. The the fence posts were, I believe the professional term is wobbly. They just weren't structurally sound. After that video, we got some feedback that, well, it was early spring, so maybe it was too cold. It had rained a few days before, so maybe the ground was too wet for the product, which my thoughts on that, though, guys, is if you're a fencing contractor, if you're building fence all year round, how many months of the year do you have ideal weather? That's not too hot, it's not too cold, not too wet, not too dry. A month out of the whole year, maybe, and that's not all together. That's throughout the year, right? Anyway, so that was some of the feedback. So I wanted to do a round 2. So yesterday's video was we did a round 2. We gave the Sitka a second chance, just because the conditions were almost ideal. It was, the temperature was nice. It hadn't rained in a while. The holes were dry. It wasn't rocky. It wasn't too sandy. It was these were nice holes. The Sitka, it didn't attach, so we used the Postmaster steel post. And the reason we use the Postmaster steel post in all of our videos is it's what we use in our business. I want the testing to mimic as close as possible the real world, predicaments, projects that we're going to be using it in. So we use the steel post. And on the Sitka bag, directly on the bag, it says it's for wood and steel and PVC. So, but the Sitka, again, didn't attach to that post. It didn't adhere to that post, which is concerning. If it's not sticking to the post, does that mean that the post can work itself loose later on? I don't know. So round 2, we still saw the Sitka didn't adhere to the post, but this time the Sitka also didn't get smaller. I'm going to say constrict. When you look up the definition on constrict and contract, they seem pretty similar. They are what you'd call synonyms, I believe. Now, the definitions are slightly different. Okay. But if you're asking a fence guy, this fence guy says it didn't constrict. It stayed roughly the same size. We also used a product called Post Lock, P-O-S-T, and then lock is L-O-C. It actually performed really well. So it's a little bit different. The Sitka is in bags. The Post Lock is in jugs. So you have a jug A and a jug B. Jug B is significantly larger than jug A. You put A into B, shake it up, pour it in. Nice thing about it is you can see through the jugs. You can see the mixture that's going on. You can visually tell that is properly mixed. That product performed really well. I was pleasantly surprised. And in all honesty, letting you guys know, I'm going to be carrying it. So we're going to order some more off their website. Now, it wasn't a sponsored post. That's the feedback we hear sometimes, talking about that. The first Sitka post, there were some accusations that we were hired by the competitors of Sitka to, show that the product didn't work because they've seen videos where it did work. And that's fine. But I'm not sponsored by Sitka or any of their competitors. Obviously, I wouldn't be sponsored by Sitka if the product didn't work. But I wasn't sponsored by their competitors either. Listen, we're a small channel, right? I mean, as of right now, we're sitting at around a little over 14,000 subscribers, which is amazing. But if we're talking about, if we're talking to a large corporation, they're talking to YouTube channels that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. So I doubt seriously that a competitor of Sitka would reach out to me directly and say, you know what you ought to do? You ought to do just a really bad testing of the product and really help us out. I don't see that happening. Anyway, the Post Lock product performed really well. We're going to be carrying it in-house for quick repairs. So that was the other question, was use cases. We're like, well, why would you use this? Where would you use this? It doesn't make any sense. The nice thing about the Post Lock, so with the Sitka and there was another brand we looked into. So I drove all over town, right? So a lot of folks said, well, if you go to Home Depot, I forget, there's another brand of the expanding faux foam. So if you go to Home Depot, they've got this other brand and it's done really well for me. Okay, I'll try anything. I mean, if it's content you guys want, we'll produce it. I don't mind. I went to Home Depot. They only had the Sitka. I went to both Menards. They only had Sitka. And then I went to both Lowe's, and they only had the Sitka product. It's literally the only product in the Springfield, Missouri market is the Sitka Pro Select. So then I went online and I found the Post Lock and product. They and just bought it off the website. They shipped it directly to us. So anyway, I like the product. It comes in a box. The box held enough for 2 posts, which is kind of nice. But anyway, use case scenarios. The use case for the product would be for a quick repair. The Sitka product, you have to wait 2 hours. So it says it's done expanding in, I think it's I should have had a bag with me. It's done expanding within 2 to 3 minutes. But then they say you have to let it finish curing for 2 hours. The post lock says it's similar. It's done expanding in 2 to 3 minutes, but it's done setting in 15 minutes. You can use it. You can nail up to these posts or screw, depending on what you're doing, within 15 minutes. So the use case scenario for the post lock foam for our business is it's going to be for the quick repairs, right? So loose post, or if we're just replacing a post, something like that. Or if it's a small project where, it's only 2 or 3 posts that we're installing, my mind is if it's for that one section that blew over in a windstorm or a car drove through it. We've done a few of those lately for whatever reason. If it's a small project, you don't want to wait, you don't want to wait to 2 hours. We also use Quikrete, but it takes 2 hours to set up as well. So I could see this coming in handy for small projects, repairs, etc., where you really don't want to wait 2 hours. You don't want your crew sitting on their hands, twiddling their thumbs for 2 hours. You can have them use this. It's ready to go in 15 minutes. If we're doing 3 or 4 posts, then by the time they're done with all of the posts, they can circle back around to the first post, start working on it. I like the product. Not sponsored. I just like it a lot. If you haven't seen the video, go check it out. It's our most recent upload up there yesterday. Matthew says, built my first fence this last weekend thanks to the help of your videos. Man, do I have a whole new respect for fence builders. Matthew, I appreciate that. I hope the project went well for you. I hope we didn't leave any questions unanswered for you. I'd like to hear. So let's hear about the project. How much was it, and what type of fence were you installing? I'd like to learn more about it. Yeah, I'm glad it went well. Here's the thing: is so you say you have a whole new respect for fence builders. What's funny is for most of us fence guys, it's all we've ever known, right? It's what I grew up as a kid. I was telling this story. I was in a contractor's luncheon today, and it was funny. It was contractors of all different types, right? So we had HVAC and plumbing, and we had some general contractors, and I was laughing with a plumbing HVAC guy who I happen to be really good friends with. He was in a similar situation in that, when he was like 12 or 13, his dad woke him up one morning in summer and said, "Hey, guess what? Let's go work." Which is exactly the story of how I got into the fencing. Was my dad woke me up the first summer morning of, I think it was 6th or 7th grade, and said, "Well, talk to your mom. You're coming to work with me." Well, that's weird because I've got plans to play with my friends all summer. We're going to ride our bikes to the gas station and do, kid stuff. To which he responded, "No, you're not. I'm going to teach you how to build fence. Don't worry. Your friends will be here after work and you can play with them then." Well, the joke there is, if you're a fence guy and if it's summertime, it's your busy season, you're working from dark to almost dark. In the middle of summer, I guess it gets dark around 9. So I guess you got a few hours to play, but I digress. Most of us fence guys, it's all we ever known. So, it's funny you say that because I think it's just normal. I think building fence is pretty normal. Nothing out of the ordinary, but then I have a lot of respect for. So we're remodeling our office. We just bought a new building next to ours that we're going to be able to move our office into and expand a little bit, which we're all excited about. The current office we're in is about 700 square feet for 4 of us, and it includes a storage closet. So it's a little tight. There's not much elbow room left. So we're expanding it into a new office. But as part of that, we had to do some floor work and some. During the construction process, we got into one of the walls. We realized half this wall was rotted because a long time ago, apparently there was a water leak and it rotted all this out. So anyway, but to save a little money, we're doing some of the work ourselves in, true fence guy fashion. I say, well, the flooring in walls we're not doing. I've got a friend, actually a business partner in a different business that his guys were doing the work, but I'm doing the networking, at least a hardware installation, right? The lines running. We've got another friend of mine that does that. But I was like, I can do the hardware installation. I mean, how tricky could that be? I mean, install a couple network racks and install the hardware. I mean, I've built IKEA furniture. I could probably figure this out. I have a whole new respect for network infrastructure installers. There is no way I would want to do that. Those guys are saints, in my opinion. I don't want to do that at all ever again. And we still have some work to do. So part of this building is also a YouTube studio. So you guys have probably heard me talk about that, where right now this is kind of a leased office space where I lease a 10 by 12 office and turn it into a video studio. Well, in this new office building, we've got space for a YouTube studio so we can have it in-house, which will be awfully nice. So I don't have to drive here and then be out of the office. But I've got to wire that up for networking. So I've got a whole nother networking closet to install. And I'll be honest with you guys, I've been putting that off just because the first one, I did not enjoy doing it nearly as much as I thought I would. Yeah. So while you say you have a whole new respect for fence builders, I have a whole new respect for networking and IT infrastructure installation guys and gals. All right. So guys, bring in your fence questions, business questions. Be happy to help however I can. If you're just joining us, drop a comment and say hi. I'd sure like to say hello to you and let me know where in this wide world you're from, where our fence fam is from. You know, we've had live. Gosh, what was it, guys? I always bring this up. It was one of the first few lives we did. I had a guy all the way from London, which if you do the time change math in your head, that's pretty late London time. So I was pretty stoked about that. We generally have a pretty good group of guys and gals join us for Ask the Expert live Q&As. You know, right now we've got so the Fence King and Fence Prince, who are from Louisiana. We've got Matthew here from the San Francisco Bay Area. We had a mid-Tennessee. Who else we got in here? Let me know where you guys are from. Say hello. Of course, if you guys are watching the replay, if you're watching this on replay, then you can still drop a comment. Let me know where you're from. I watch the comments on all the videos. I try to respond back in as timely as manner as possible. So here's the process: is on recorded videos, you guys leave a comment and it dings my phone. The YouTube app pops up, YouTube Studio app pops up and says, "Hey, you've got a message." Which actually, let's see. There's usually one on here. Well, so right now there's not. Usually there's at least one or two comments in there. So what I do is in my free time, which right now is usually in the evenings, after I get done with work and I rush home and have dinner with the kids real quick before the kids go to bed. And then we've got a little one at the house now. So my shift is the evening and somewhat of the overnight shift. So from dinner to usually about midnight to 2, whenever that last bottle is. Not last bottle, but whenever that overnight bottle is. So that's my quiet time. From the kids go to bed, whenever kids go, 8 o'clock or so. So from 8 to midnight, it's kind of my quiet time. And I've got the baby, so I'm feeding her and messing around with her. But usually, right now, she sleeps. She's 3 weeks old, so she sleeps a lot. So that's the time when I grab my phone and I start replying to YouTube comments as I'm sitting there watching. I actually watch YouTube up on my TV just because that's how deep into this thing I am. So, but anyway, that's when I respond to your guys' comments. And I try to respond back in as timely as a manner as I can. But what's funny is I always know when a video is taking off. So the YouTube algorithm's weird. It usually lets when we upload a video, it usually lets it sit there for a month to 2 months. And then for whatever reason, on my graph, you just see this thing shoot up, right? And I always know when a video is taking off. You usually don't get any warning. The way I know is I start getting tons of comments on whatever particular video this is. And so then I'll go check the analytics and say, oh, yep, that video is doing incredibly well right now. Anyway, I say that to say I try to get back to your comments as quickly as possible. But when a video is really taking off, it takes me a little time. So say hi to a few of you guys. Divine Fence, what is up? You guys, Divine Fence has been with us. Gosh, how long have you been? Last couple months, I'd say you've been joining us almost every week in the live chat. I appreciate that a lot. You guys, I said this before, but I'll say it again for you guys just joining us. You guys help me make this broadcast, right? You give me things to talk about. You give me content. You ask me, incredibly good questions to where you help this thing along, and I appreciate you. So Divine Fence in Massachusetts, thank you very much. So we got East Coast covered. We got the West Coast covered. Brandon Markham. I hope I said that right. Looks like Markham. Brandon's from Utah, Deck and Fence. What is up, Brandon? So Brandon's got Utah locked down. So we got San Francisco and Louisiana, not Nevada. We had Tennessee and Massachusetts. We're just kind of spreading out everywhere, and I love it a lot. All right, Matthew's going to tell us a little bit more about his fence. So it's 87 foot long. So for a DIY fence, that's a pretty good fence. Picture frame, so that's pretty impressive. The picture frame, depending on where you are in the country, picture frames called different things, different places. But no matter which style you're talking about, picture frame is always labor intensive. There always has like a little trim work that you got to do to really make it look nice. So that's impressive. We use 4x6x8 posts. That ought to last you a while. I like that you upgraded from 4x4 to 4x6. That'll give you more structure in there for more support. Redwood 2x4s and pickets. So I'm jealous, Matthew. So, well, I was getting ready to say we can't get redwood here in the Midwest. We can. The cost is a bit prohibitive for that product. So we don't get to play with redwood hardly at all. I'm jealous. I've got a friend that's got a fence company just outside LA, and they use redwood exclusively, and I get to see all the pictures of the fences they build, and every day I'm jealous. Of course, when I reached out to one of the mills, they said, sure, we'll sell it to you. Just pay for the shipping, and we'll get it over to you. I don't know if you've priced shipping lately from California to the Midwest, but it is a bit spendy. Anyway, redwood 2x4s and pickets, which I'm jealous. Stainless steel nails, I like that. So they're more expensive. Stainless steel is typically about 4 times, in my experience, it's typically about 4 times more expensive than a galvanized, but it'll last longer, and you don't have any chance of streaks. Now, the galvanized nails we use hot dip galvanized. We don't get streaks, but sometimes you see some galvanized nails that do. So, but by using stainless steel nails, you take that off the board completely. Concrete footers, I like that a lot. So when you say concrete footers, Matthew, do you mean the posts are set in concrete? Or do you mean, so sometimes when someone says concrete footer, actually we have a project going right now, an ornamental project that has a concrete mow strip. So it's like, I want to say it's a 10-inch wall that runs the entire length of the fence with the fence centered on top of that wall to make sure no grass grows up. If you did that, I'm incredibly impressed. Even if you set the post in concrete, still impressed. 87 foot, that's a pretty decent little fence there. They replaced my fence between the house and a new fence. Decided to go with a horizontal fencing gate. The horizontal style is absolutely taking off. If we used wood post, we would probably do a lot more horizontal style fences. When you're using the steel Postmaster post, it's a little bit harder to do the horizontal simply because the way the posts are made, you have to screw through the post into the product. And so pickets are too skinny to try to screw through them, through the post and into them. So we end up having to use a 2x product. Typically on a horizontal fence, the fences I like to do are a mixture of 2x4, 2x6, and 2x8s. We've done a few different ways with 2x8s on the bottom third, 2x6s in the middle third, 2x4s in the top third, 2x4s, and then we space the 2x4s out about an inch. That looks super slick, but it gets pricey because it's 2x material. And in the wood market right now, as all you guys know, Matthew, I'm sure you found out, the wood market right now is crazy. The pricing is all over the board. No one knows what supply they have or when they're getting more, and it's just priced incredibly. So, Matthew, bravo on your fence. I like to hear that you're out there building the fence on your own. Tell me about how the gate went. The gate building process is typically the most, frustrating part of building a fence. The first few fences you build, because it never seems to go quite right. The geometry of the gates is usually a little tricky to figure out. We use steel posts, steel gate frames, and steel hardware, so it's a little bit easier. But yeah, I'd like to hear about that. I'm glad to hear that the fence went well for you. Brandon from Utah Deck and Fence says, what is the best way to get better pricing on vinyl? If you figure this out, you let me know. I don't know. So right now the vinyl market's going through what the wood market went through in early to mid 2020, early to mid last year. I say 2020 because we're trying to put ourselves, as much distance between us and that year as possible. So instead of saying last year, I say, back in 2020. But anyway, vinyl's going through what wood went through then. It's harder to find the quality, and honestly, because it's harder to find, you have some mills that are relaxing their quality control standards, and you have some new mills that seem to be starting up almost every day because they send emails out to everyone and just saying, "Hey, guess what? We provide vinyl now, and you can buy it by the truckload." Always makes me a bit nervous, right? But even the new guys that are just starting up, I say new guys, new companies starting up vinyl mills. The pricing is still sky high, still astronomical. What I'm afraid of here, Brandon, though, is I would almost guess that vinyl prices are going to keep going up, and here's why. Vinyl is a petroleum-based product, right? So as we see refineries shut down, As we see domestic petroleum become less available, the price goes up. You can see it reflected in the gas pumps. Gas today costs significantly more than gas a week ago costs. I think that trend's going to continue. So as that trend continues, I think you see the price of vinyl consistently follow it. I mean, you can see, you can follow vinyl pricing and look at a chart on U.S. petroleum prices, and they're almost identical, right? Petroleum goes up, vinyl follows it, because petroleum is a product. How do I want to say that? Vinyl is a petroleum based product. I don't think you're going to find good pricing or better pricing on vinyl anytime soon, unfortunately. Divine Fence, glad you did a new video with Post Foam. I've not used the product. Enjoy the video. Divine, I'm always happy to help. Um, you know, so I like the post lock. When we gave the Sika a second chance, it didn't adhere to the post, but as you guys probably saw that watch the video, I shook the post just as much as I would shake the post lock and the concrete, and it seemed to hold firm. Now we're going to find out as we go on. So as this process progresses, as I said in the video, we're going to start building fence on the post. I'm going to show, because there's a lot of the DIY crowd that'd like to see, how we do privacy fence, how we do shadow box and board on board. So I'm going to do some videos of those. I'm also going to do a more in-depth explainer video on stair step versus a sloped fence, how to keep your top either stair stepped or sloped. Anyway, we're going to build fence on these posts, and then we're going to leave it. And we're going to leave this fence for however long it takes to find some good results and see long-term how these foam products last with fence on them. I'll say this about the post lock product: the more research. Here's some research I did. The research I did led me to the understanding that Sika does not create their foam, the components to the foam. They're part A, part B. They don't manufacture them. They simply buy them in bulk, repackage them, and then send them on. The post lock, from what the research I did, the post lock, the company that owns post lock also owns the chemical company, the manufacturer of the part A and part B. They make their own, so they have a little bit better control over it. That company, that company that makes these part A and part B sells directly to utility companies that install a lot of utility poles. Now, this is according to their website. I haven't talked to utility companies that have used their product, but from their marketing, their marketing materials out there, they sell a significant amount of this product directly to utility companies. And then they created the Post Lock brand to be more of a consumer-facing brand. So this is the product that a lot of the utility pole companies use. That gives me a lot more faith in the product, and I think you saw it in the results. It had a more consistent fill of the hole. The Sika product, one of the foams overfilled the post. The second hole underfilled. It was like 3/4 full or something like that. So inconsistent, didn't adhere to the post. Whereas the post lock was a tighter fit in the hole, didn't shrink, contract. Which, in all fairness, the Sika brand didn't shrink or contract this time either. It was more consistent. I would expect that product to probably outperform the Sika. We also have a control set in concrete so that we can all agree, we can all compare the results of each foam to a control of concrete, that everyone kind of knows how that product works. So you're very welcome. I'm always up for different ideas too. So as you guys are watching these videos and you have an idea for how the video could be better or more testing you'd like to see on the product, different types of testing, leave those in the comments below. I'm serious. So Jeremy and I, when we're doing brainstorming sessions, we do those every Tuesday. I record content on Tuesday. So he and I meet up here, and we've got a whiteboard directly off screen where we just write all the ideas for our videos, and we start with the comments. We scroll through, and we try to listen to the voice of the people watching the videos to hear, did they want more testing on this and less testing on that? Did they want more explanation? So one thing we learned is when we talked about what was it? Let me check the video. So it's basically where I talk about stair stepping versus sloping the top of the fence. Let's see what that video was. One of the very first videos, so we'll have to go back just a little bit to find it. Let's see. All right, we're getting close. Getting close. Well, this is great video content, I'm sure. As you guys are watching this, be sure to leave your comments or questions in the comments below. And we'll certainly get back to answering those in just a second. Okay, so the video was how to build a fence on uneven ground. The gist of that video is straight top versus stair step versus sloped. And so basically what I did is I pulled this whiteboard behind me and I kind of illustrated the difference. I prefer an on-site stick-built fence because you can follow the terrain better than a pre-built panel. Now I fully understand that with pre-built panels there is some adjustment there, right? You can slope it to a certain extent. But the feedback we largely got on that is most everyone wanted to see it built in person. They wanted to see on-site reaction or on-site demonstration rather than in the studio. So that's on our board to do with the fence posts that we set with the fence foam. Anyway, I say all that. I went down that rabbit hole to say, as you guys are watching these videos, if you have feedback, if you'd like to see more explanation on one subject or different forms of testing, maybe on the fence foam, leave them in the comments. Jeremy and I, like I said, every Tuesday go through the comments and we've got an ideas board right here and we leave all of the comments on the ideas board and it helps us create follow-up content that we think you guys would enjoy seeing. Bo Butler, what is up? Can you talk about your process of going from just an install company to also being a supplier? What were the major headaches you dealt with, and what would you do differently? Very good. Not a sponsor, just thirsty, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I do know. Basically, the biggest step is the capital it takes to buy excess material that you're not going to need right away, and you're willing to hold on to it for a little while until it sells. You need quite a bit of money, and you need space to store it, right? So what we were in all honesty, it was my dad that really started this for our company. He just started bringing in extra material and keeping it on hand. So for example, when we needed 3 rolls of 4 foot 11.5 gauge, we knew, hey, that's a product that we sell a lot, or we have requested a lot. We'd probably sell a lot of it. Let's bring in a pallet being 9 rolls. So we're only going to need 3. We'll sit on 6 of these for a little while, knowing that we're going to sell them pretty quick. Same thing with, all of the standard things that come along with a 4-foot chain link fence, which is common in our area. So 2.5 by 6 terminal post, or 2 3/8 by 6, inch and 5/8 by 5.5, the inch and 3/8 by 21 rail, all of the fittings and accessories. When we buy 2.5-inch tension bands, you get a little bit better price when you buy a bag of 100, right? Rather than buy the 40 you need for the project. So using that extra capital to invest in more material and have it on hand. We had a shop that we were already fabricating out of. So we built shelves. We built storage cubbies. I don't know what the correct term, but basically, you know what I'm talking about. Storage cubbies for these fittings. That was along the outside walls of the fabrication shop. They only sit about, 2 foot deep. So it took, 2 foot off the perimeter of the shop, but that wasn't too much. Then outside, we had the lot available to store these materials, whether it's the long rail, the cut post, or the wire. We had a little bit of room where we stored it in the middle of our lot and we just drove around it, right? The biggest thing it takes is capital. Just because, especially right now in the wintertime, we're not selling a lot of material. Just because there aren't a lot of folks that are building fence. Now, there are fences being built, don't get me wrong, but we're not selling nearly as much in the winter as what we would in the summer. Now, and we don't sell a ton. I don't want to make it sound like, we're a wholesale distributor or anything like that. We sell I want to say last year we sold $270,000 worth of materials. So it is a lot, but in comparison to some of these, regional distributors, a drop in the bucket. Really what it takes is capital. It also takes, manpower to be in your office 20, not 24/7, but during operating hours. You need someone there to sell the material, and you need someone to help load up the material, right? So it just so happens we had an admin that was working in our office answering the phone, so that when someone called our office, I got a pleasant voice welcoming them to Ozark Fence and answering their questions. Well, the phones don't ring all the time, right? So she could also do the material sales. And then we had someone in the shop that was already there fabricating. So then they also helped load material and pull material. Now that's grown since then. We've got a dedicated yard guy, for lack of a better term, that helps load and pre-pull materials. And we've got a guy in the office that is for all intents and purposes running the material sale portion. That's actually her goal for 2020 is to take over that division and really just rock and roll through it. So it takes manpower and it takes capital, and it takes a spot to put it, right? Major headaches are my major headache is sitting on that investment, right? So right now on the lot, I don't know, between wood on the lot, the Postmaster steel post, all of the chain link fittings, accessories, and everything, I bet we've got $100,000 to $120,000 worth of material sitting on the lot right now, just sitting there. Not, that's money that's not in the bank. So that's probably the biggest headache. And then in the summertime, we end up stocking up more in the summer because we use more fence as the fence company, but we also sell more fence during the summer. So we keep more of an inventory there. So where it's $100,000 now, it might be $200,000 worth of inventory that we keep over the summer, and that's for both the material sales and for the installed sales portion. So hope what would I do differently? So okay, both. So this is actually a real conversation that we're having right now is, should they be separate entities, right? Should we have one entity that does just the retail sales, wholesale sales, the distributing, for lack of a better term? Should that be separate from the installed company? The reason being, inventory is a bit of a nightmare. So just because you show it in inventory, so say, someone comes in and needs 12 3-inch 10-foot posts, just random post, right? Well, we show them in inventory, so they're there, but the inventory doesn't show the projects that are pulling from that inventory that are scheduled for next week or the week after. So if the retail side sees them in inventory, pulls them, sells them, but we need them this week, right? So maybe in this instance, today's Thursday, they sell them today. Well, maybe they were for a project that gets installed tomorrow. So we're trying to figure out a system for taking them out of inventory. It gets complicated, right? So that's a conversation that's going on right now, is do we separate those two entities into a material sales side and then an installed sale, in that scenario, the installed side buys these materials from the retail side. That way it'll give us better control over the inventory, a little bit more clean of a process. If I did things differently, I might do that. But that takes significantly more resources. Starting out, we didn't have enough sales to justify the payroll, the inventory cost, and the real estate it would take to do it separately. So that's a hard question. But if I were doing it differently, I would I'd consider it long and hard on just starting those separate from the get-go. So yeah, great question, Bo. Guys, if you got any more questions, let me know. I'm going through the questions right now, kind of in order as they come. Yeah, so in Matthew's fence that he built, the pricing was about $2,000, half the price of the cheapest quote I found, that makes sense. So when we're talking about installed numbers, installed costs, materials are usually about 54% of the installed quote. So if you were to buy them retail, the materials retail from us versus installed, the materials represent about 53%. So that makes sense. Labor usually is about 30%. Then you've got overhead, and hopefully, if you've done everything right, you've got a little bit of profit on the end of that. So that makes sense. Half the price is right for the retail, and then you ended up saving yourself the labor, the overhead, and the profit. So yeah, good deal. What's up, TJ? TJ username. Love it. I live in the southwest of Arizona. We have a new metal fence that's about 30 foot tall here. How deep would you set the fence to prevent burrowing underneath? Well, that is a very good question. I'll be honest with you, TJ. I've never built a fence that's 30 foot tall. So one rule of thumb is a third of the height of the fence. So if you followed that, the post would be 10 foot deep. But you said how deep would you set the fence to prevent burrowing underneath? It would probably depend on what's burrowing, right? So here in the Midwest, the biggest thing we deal with is dogs digging under the fence. So some folks will bury a welded wire, like a cattle panel, cut it into 2 foot strips, bury it 2 foot with their posts. Just basically dig a 2 foot trench around and pour it into that, or put the panel into that, and then bury it. Yeah. So, but for the posts, I've never built a 30 foot fence. So if we did, there would be engineers involved, and we would just build it to the engineered specifications. But one of the rules of thumb that's out there is a third of the height of the fence, which would probably put you at about 10 foot deep. What are your thoughts on all these metal R panel fences? I'm not super familiar, Carlos, with metal R panel fences. Let's Google that real quick. Let us all learn together. So it's probably in different regions they call things different. They give things different titles. So I'm going to Google metal R panels for sale. Okay. Yeah. So in our area, we'd call this like a barn tin. So basically it is, the way this describes it, R panel is a low maintenance, durable metal roofing alternative to conventional roofing. It's an ideal for retrofitting over existing. So basically it is a metal roofing, or what we would call barn metal. So we're actually building our back. So we bought this property next to us with the buildings, and it needs a new fence. The fence that's there is in pretty rough shape. It's had a bunch of brush and trees grow up through it. It's had some vandalism, some cuts in it. So we're actually going to use these metal sheeting, the R panels. Now we all know what they're officially called. We're going to use that for the back fencing. So I'll let you know. I don't have any direct experience with it, but we've seen quite a bit of it built. I mean, it seems to make sense. You set your post, and then what we're going to do. So we're going to set 2.5 inch. We've got quite a bit of 2.5 inch CS40, which it's not. It's depending on which manufacturer. It could be called CS40, WS40, CS. What else is it called? SS40. Anyway, 40 weight. That's not scheduled 40. Anyway, so we're gonna set those for posts. And we're gonna use 1.5 inch square galvanized rail. It's what we build our steel gate frames out of. So we have quite a bit of that on hand. We're gonna use that for our cross rails. We're gonna pre-drill the panels at the correct heights, and then screw them onto the frame. I'll let you know how it works out. We haven't built it yet. We'll be building it probably over the next month or so. I'll let you know. My thoughts on it is, I mean, as that website says, they're pretty maintenance free. It's a coated metal. That site had it as coated metal. We're actually going to use Galvalume, so it's a galvanized metal, so it should last quite a while. It's a solid fence, so if you're going to cut that thing out, you're going to have to bring a grinder and cut it. It's going to be pretty obvious that there's a cut in the fence. And it's going to be pretty obvious that you're cutting it open. So we'll probably weld the seams. That way that you can't just unscrew it and pull a sheet of it off and then screw it back. It's a pretty nice solution. I'm pretty excited to see how it goes in. But I'll share more of it with you guys when we get to it. So Matthew talking about his fence that he built at his house. He had 87 foot. He did a horizontal gate. The gate was actually simple. We did galvanized posts and one of the adjustable metal gate frames. That's right. Okay. So I'm sorry, because you had asked me about that last week, right? The adjustable gate frames. I'd like to know. So it sounds like that worked out well for you. So if I remember the question right from last week, it was an adjustable. Yeah, you said it, the adjustable metal fence gate frame from probably from a home improvement store. You see them quite a lot. So I'm glad to hear that worked out well for you. Had to get a little creative with the pickets, but that wasn't a terrible process. Yeah. So here's the thing, fence guys get into this a lot. So a lot of times it takes a little bit of creativity to get the project done in general. Whether it's utility lines or tree roots, the layout usually takes creativity itself. And then the actual installation process, as you found out with the pickets, sometimes that takes some creativity as well. You got to think outside the box. That's something I enjoy about it, right? So I like figuring out problems. That's just how my mind works. Give me a problem. I'm going to chew on it for a while and I'm going to figure out how to solve this riddle, solve the problem, puzzle, whatever. I like using creativity. So good to hear that it went super well for you. Matthew, let's do this. I'd like to hear your long-term results with that adjustable gate frame. And actually, we probably ought to do a video on it. So Jeremy, as we're watching this replay, let's go ahead and put that on our board. And if I remember at the end of this broadcast, I'll write it up there as well. But we probably ought to do a video review of the adjustable gate frames. So, but Matthew, I'd like to hear your real world experience with it long term also. Appreciate you sharing your project with us. So we're going to go ahead and put BB in timeout for a little bit inappropriate comments there. Yeah, so Carlos says there's a company here in Texas, Mueller Buildings, that sells an R-panel metal fencing. What are your thoughts on all these metal fences? So that's funny, Carlos. So that's actually exactly who I pulled up is Mueller Products R-panels. So Mueller Incorporated is exactly the website that I found when we pulled it up on Google. So, I honestly, Carlos, I think they're a great idea. I mean, it's another great tool to have in your tool belt as far as fencing goes. The biggest thing is figuring out what tool to use for what problem, right? Would I use it in a residential yard? No. But, I mean, commercial, auto salvage places have been using metal fences for quite a long time. They do a great job at, privacy. They give you quite a lot of privacy. There's 100% privacy, really. They're hard to cut through, and you can't scale them. If you build this thing tall enough, you're going to have to bring a ladder to get over it, too. Whereas with chain link, you can scale it a little bit easier. So I think I like it. It's a tool we're going to add to our tool belt. Like I said, we're going to do our backline fence in that because we back up to an alley. So it's going to give us privacy from the alley. It's also going to be pretty obvious if somebody tries to cut through it to try to come in and steal some fence stuff. Yeah, so I agree, Matthew. So here's the thing with this, it gets complicated, right? So the sales system, yes. The problem is we don't declare it sold until we install it. The fence materials. So we've gone through that about creating sales orders that pull the material out of inventory and store them. But, from an accounting standpoint, it's still inventory until we store it. So now you're going to have two inventories. So you would move it from a retail inventory to an installed inventory until the crew actually pulls it up or picks it up and then goes out and installs it. We're working through that. That's the thing is we're trying to find a way, to answer the question, to solve the problem, which is what I said my mind likes working on. But in a way that makes sense, that's easy to use for our guys, both out in the field and in our lot. They're picking the materials, and it makes sense for our accountant at the end of the year so that he's not pulling his hair out trying to account for, if we called it inventory, if it's technically out of our retail inventory, but it hasn't been installed yet, it is technically still inventory. I don't know. It's a headache for sure, but we probably do need an inventory system right now. So the installed, actually, I kind of walked you guys through it for our CRM and for our work orders and everything. We use Job Nimbus. For the inventory and accounting and all that, we use QuickBooks because our accountant really likes working with QuickBooks. I'm fairly comfortable working in QuickBooks, so it's a nice system for us to use. And it's nice that our accountant also uses it. He can log in, get all the reports he needs, make suggestions and recommendations for, business moving forward, that sort of thing. But he doesn't do a great job at, you would almost need like you need an extra step in the inventory system for pending orders. So it would leave it technically from an accounting perspective, it would leave it in inventory, but from a real world perspective, it wouldn't be available in inventory; it'd be pending. So basically, basically what we're probably going to end up doing is pulling all, when we make a sale, when we sell a project, then we'll pull the order and just set it aside, have a pre-pick area to take it out of inventory, our physical inventory. That's kind of it's kind of a half measure, really. Anyway, have you tried ground screws? Haven't tried ground screws. I would like to. I'm not sure what we're talking about. Ground screws. Why don't you give me a little bit more detail as to what we're talking about? So, the reason there's a few different products I've seen that screw into the ground. One was, gosh, it's been forever. There is a post mounting system for 4x4 post. It basically looked like a aircraft tie down. It's what I use in my yard to fix our trampoline to the ground. So they look like big corkscrews. They go in the ground, and then this one has an eyelet that pops up, and you can attach a come along to it. Is what we did. But in this system, instead of that eyelet at the top, it had a mounting point, had flanges that then the 4x4 post sat down into, and you would screw the 4x4 post into the flanges. It didn't last very long. I didn't see it in the market very long at all. I would almost guess, because in this case, the flanges are your weakest point, right? They're your weakest link in the chain. I would almost bet that led to some problems long term. Why don't you let me know a little bit more about what we're talking about? Ground screws. I'd love to talk about it. Big Bertha the Great, what is up? Hello. Thank you very much. Try to make it as interesting possible. You guys are actually the ones helping me make this interesting. If you guys have thoughts, questions, etc. about fencing or business in general, I'd love to be able to talk about it and help as much as possible. This is just as much your show as it is mine. Divine says, great video with Sean King. Can't wait for the video with Mark Olson and many others. A lot of respect to all you guys for great content. I agree. I need to reach out to Mark and try to get in touch, schedule a time to do a live with him. I really like watching Mark's content. If you guys get the chance, search Mark Olson. He puts out a lot of good content, and it's good content. You guys should watch it. It's entertaining content as well. So Sean King's actually going to be a quarterly guest. We're going to have him on about once a quarter. That live broadcast went really well. I think you guys enjoyed it. The views on the video were really good. We got quite a few views on the video. So I think it went really well. And so I reached out to Sean and asked him if he would be willing to be a reoccurring guest, and he accepted. So about quarterly, we'll have him on. Once a month, we're going to have Caleb with Stain and Seal Experts on. As you guys know, Stain and Seal Experts sponsor the live video portions of the YouTube channel, and can't say thank you enough to those guys for sponsoring us. It's a product, first and foremost, I believe in, but then also I'm through our business relationships, I believe Caleb and I have become good friends as well. So I appreciate his friendship and his support of the channel. I'll be having him on once a month to answer all of your guys' staining and sealing questions. So, all right. So TJ says, what is the best anti-termite treatment you would recommend? So we've talked about it before. The Post Saver sleeves. I like this product a lot. Let's do this. So we are going to look up the Post Saver product, and I'm going to share it with you guys here live on this channel. Keep in mind, I'm a fence guy, not a tech wizard, so this might get a little clunky here for a second, but it is a product I like. We use steel posts, so we don't typically use wood posts, so we don't actually have a chance to use this product, but I've researched it quite a lot when we were using wood posts, and I was to the point that we were going to use it for all the wood posts we install. All right, I found the website here on the laptop. I'm going to try to share it with you guys. I'm going to share screen, and then I'm going to share the Chrome tab. All right, that seems to be working out. Bingo, there we go. All right. So, Post Saver product. Now, what this does is this puts a sleeve. It's a physical sleeve that goes on the outside of the post, and it permanently affixes. If you guys think of it like shrink wrap, right? You apply heat to this, and it permanently affixes itself to the post. Now, it sits above the ground. It sits quite a bit below the ground. This is kind of the aerobic zone of the soil. It's where a lot of the termites reside, a lot of the microbes that produce rot, a lot of the moisture sits there, etc. This is when, as a fencing contractor, when we're pulling fence posts, this is where the majority of that rot occurs, is right in the aerobic zone of the soil. You get much deeper, there's not a lot of microbial activity going on that deep. So generally the posts are in pretty decent shape the deeper you go. But when you pull a post, if it's rotted, you usually see rot. I usually see rot, within 4 or 5 inches above, and then 5, 6, 7 inches below. Let's see if this shows us. Let's learn more about the product. So this gives you a little bit better look at the product. So, and the nice thing about it too is it gives you, this photo kind of demonstrates it. It gives you a guideline at where this post should be installed at grade, so that you're sure that you're not setting it too high or too low. You would have to set your post to depth in this scenario. Well, I guess you could trim the bottom of the post. You would just put the sleeve on. If you didn't get all the way down to where this was at grade, you would then trim the bottom of the post, I suppose. See if we can see what else they have here. Oh, there we go. We should look at the how to apply. So this is basically showing the application process. So what he's doing, he's got the post sleeve on the product on this wood 4x4, and he's using what looks like a propane torch. Let's how long is this? That's about a minute. Let's view this. Yeah, so he's applying heat, and like I said, just like shrink wrap, it permanently affixes itself to the post. Okay, and they're rolling on some water to try to cool it off. It's always a good thought. And then you set it directly in, and there it is. So there's the line that shows exactly where it should be set to prevent rotten insects. Looks like he set it in concrete. So this is interesting. So they're actually driving this post with the post sleeve. So I guess so once you permanently affix it to that post, it joins it, it mends itself to the post where you can also drive it. That's pretty interesting. So that's what I would recommend. That's a product I would recommend for preventing termite and rot, would be the Post Saver product. I'm not sponsored by them. We don't receive compensation by recommending them. It's just a product that we've used quite a bit, and or we've researched quite a bit. We haven't used it. We've researched it quite a bit, and if we were installing wood post, this would be an option for more of a premium type offering on the product, or a premium offering for the product. So what we were thinking about doing pre-pandemic, when materials were available, back when life was good in the fencing industry and you could get wood materials fairly easily, we had 3 levels of service. We had 3 product offerings. We had went down a rabbit hole. So we had 3 different offerings. We had our basic offering, our value is what we'd called it, was treated pine pickets on treated pine rails on treated pine posts. And we had an improved value, which still kept the treated pine posts, treated pine rails, but had cedar pickets. So a little bit of an upgraded appearance. Still has a treated pine structure. And then the lifetime value was our steel post on cedar rails and cedar pickets. So in this scenario, what we're going to do is just add post savers as a included portion of the improved value. So we're saying it for the value fence, we're basically giving you the most economical fence that we can, the least expensive offering we have. We're just a baseline product. But for the improved value, we upgrade the pickets to cedar, but also we'd upgrade your post to using a post saver product. That way we're preventing rotten insects. We're also going to team it with, let's do this. Let's look up fence armor, because that's a product we've talked about a little bit. Let's just Google fence armor. So what Fence Armor does is it provides post protection, like physical post protection, or I guess so. Post Saver offers physical protection from termites, rot, but what the Fence Armor does is it provides physical protection from weed eaters, mainly from harsh damage that could tear apart this post. Let's see what they've got in the how-to. Probably give a little bit better explanation of this. So this is what we're preventing, right? Or we're trying to prevent. We're trying to prevent this damage. Well, wait a minute. I should probably share my screen with you guys again. So what the Fence Armor does is it's trying to prevent what's going on right here. We've got this weed eater damage that the lawn care companies or the homeowner has done because they're trying to trim all this grass right around the post, right? So what this does is in the Fence Armor is installed around the post to protect it. It gives it an armor plating, if you will. Well, we won't wait on that, but you can kind of get the gist of it that the fence armor is attached to the post, around the post. You can also do it on ornamental. That way you're not stripping off the coating on the post. So really at this point, the fence armor becomes kind of the sacrificial layer, right? We see this in a lot of other industries where you put a lesser expensive option on the outside to sacrifice itself for the protection of the main product. So for the improved value, what we're going to do is we're going to take the post saver, team it up with the fence armor, and have that be our improved value. It's a product I like a lot. Like I said, not sponsored or endorsed by that manufacturer, but it's a product I like. We researched it quite a lot. It's well made. We'd actually gone so far as request samples to be sent in. We kind of messed around with them at the office, put them on a few posts, tried to damage them as much as possible, and it's a product I really liked. So something I would recommend for you guys to look into. Now you do have to, the post saver product has to be installed prior to the fence installation. Obviously, the fence armor can be installed after the fence installation. Divine Fence, glad to hear Sean King will be on quarterly. I'm looking forward to them. I've gotten some oil-based stain from Stain Steel Experts website after your recommendation. Works great. I love to hear that. Like I said, the Stain Steel Experts, it started off before they're sponsoring the show. They were a supplier of ours. They were a vendor of ours for the fence company. We've used a lot of their stain. And after doing quite a bit of research on different stains available, kind of the pros and cons and some dangers of working with higher VOC stain options, we settled on Stainless Steel Experts. It also helps that, Caleb is the founder of Stainless Steel Experts, and he's always readily available to answer any and all questions. Really helped seal the deal. He took quite a bit of time. And at the time, he didn't know me from Adam. He spent, I'd say, probably half hour, 45 minutes on the phone, walking me through the product, walking me through the installation techniques. And he was very forthcoming with the pros and cons of their product. He's like, listen, if you're looking for the cheapest stain available, we're probably not that solution. But if you're looking for a quality solution and you don't want to worry, about the health of your guys when using it, we probably are the right solution. So I like Stainless Steel Experts a lot. I'm glad you liked and used them as well. And so that's why I approached them to be kind of so it was kind of a mutual, us approaching each other. We were on the phone talking about some other things, and Caleb said, hey, let's talk about your channel here. Let's talk about Stainless Steel Experts. You use a lot of our product. You obviously like using it. You talk a lot about us. Let's talk about sponsoring your show. We'd like to give back to you guys. So, but honestly, that's why I considered bringing them on as a sponsor, is because we use the product. We love the product. I wouldn't hesitate a second to recommend it to anybody and everybody. So it just made sense to have them be, kind of our first inaugural sponsor. Sean King, he runs a good ship. I'm really excited to bring him on quarterly. I'm really excited to be a part of his Mr. Fence Academy team, trying to bring fencing contractors, as much value and to help grow their business and in a safe but scalable manner. I'm really proud to be a part of that team. If you guys run a fence company and you're interested in it, you ought to look up Mr. Fence Academy. I think Sean's doing some incredible things. He's basically trying to share what's in his big head. And I don't say this in negative, but he's got a big head that's full of all sorts of great fence knowledge. He's trying to share that with other fence contractors at scale. And I applaud what he's up to over there. What is up, Candace? Candace with us. So Candace is who I was telling you guys about. when we're running our retail, her mission for 2021 is to take charge of the retail side of the business, and just be a retail sales rock star. And she's off to a great start. She's been with us for what, Candace? About a month or so. She's already kind of taken the reins and up to some really good stuff over there. She's actually catching on a lot quicker than I thought she would. She didn't have fencing experience prior to coming to us, but she's watching a lot of videos on YouTube and learning a lot, asking a lot of good questions and getting hands-on knowledge. So Candace, welcome. Thank you for being a rock star with us. Martin, what is up? Martin's with us quite a lot here on the live broadcast week after week, and I appreciate that a lot. Ask, what is your preference with gate doors, swing out or swing in? So this is kind of a regional thing, and it seems to vary, by area as to what they prefer. In our region, pretty much everybody prefers they swing out. That being said, I watch videos from guys in other markets in other areas and regions, and it's kind of mixed, kind of 50-50. You see a lot of markets, a lot of the larger markets, like the Dallas-Fort Worth market. I see some videos produced by guys down there. They predominantly swing in. It kind of depends on where your market's at, right? What's common in your market. In our market, it's gates that swing out. Unless, of course, that's our default is swing out. But sometimes grade has, the grade of the yard has different ideas. So, we'll want to swing it out, but if the grade rises in front of the fence or towards the front yard of the fence and the gate can't swing out, then, of course, we'll kind of switch our system up a little bit. We'll flip our hardware and swing that gate in. I like swinging them out because we can build it to where the gate is flush with the fence. So it looks like when you're looking at it from the road, of course, you see the hardware a little bit, but using the Shark hardware, you actually don't see nearly as much of the hardware as you do like with the traditional strap hinges. But yeah, you get to set the gate flush with the fence. Whereas when we swing the gates in, we typically have to inset that gate. Not the end of the world. Still looks nice, but I like swinging them out. Divine, does your company have an app to do layout sketches? If so, which one do you like the best, or do you do them on paper? We actually do them on Google Earth. So we'll do Google Earth. We'll do a SketchUp. So let's do this, guys. Once I learn a new way of doing things, I like to do it a lot. You guys are going to figure that out. So screen share is something I seem to be good at lately. I'm going to pull an address that I just know off the top of my head. Actually, my old where we used to live. All right, so keep in mind. All right, let me share the screen with you guys. Keep in mind, I'm doing this on a laptop, so I don't have a mouse. Usually, I would have a mouse that I'm working with. So what I would do now, this is in general, right? So sometimes different layouts call for different plans, but if we're doing the whole entire fence, the whole entire backyard, really, it's as simple as something like this. With the layout, and then we would denote, in this case, there's a double gate right here. So we would take a screenshot of this, in this computer, it's Shift Command 4, I believe. And then we take a screenshot of it, add it into Job Nimbus. Job Nimbus being our CRM that our crews use. That way they can pull up a satellite image of the home and know exactly where that fence is going. Or, we use the online quote tool for my salesman. Well, I was going to share one of those with you. The problem with that is it's got some personal information. So when a client sends us their online quote tool, it has their address, but also has their name, email address, and phone number. They probably wouldn't, if I was a customer, I wouldn't be super happy with someone sharing that kind of information out with the world on YouTube. So I probably won't pull that up. But the online quote tool pulls up essentially this same view, right? It essentially pulls up a satellite view of the home, shows exactly how much fence, shows where the gates were placed, that sort of thing. So I take the quote tool, take a screenshot of the quote tool, and add it into Job Nimbus, the job notes in Job Nimbus, so that the crew can actually see the quote tool also. So we don't specifically have an app just for the layout sketches. We used to do them on paper. We used to do them all by hand. All of our quotes are by hand. There is an app out there. So there's CFS, a computer fencing software. We've used it in the past. I'm not, I don't know. I won't go into detail. We don't use it anymore. Yeah, but there is software out there. The computer fencing software will do it. It'll do a layout for you. The layout will also pull out all the materials, and it'll provide a quote based on the materials needed. So that's kind of slick. But like I said, we don't use it anymore. We use Job Nimbus because it's an all-in-one software, and it doesn't have annual updates that you need to pay for in order to make the software usable. Great question, though, Devon. What do you guys do? I'd love to hear how you guys do sketches. I'm always willing to learn. So Google Earth is just quick and easy, and it's efficient. So we can also, once we take a screenshot, we can also go into Paint and mark it up if we need to, for our internal use. But generally, the overhead view on Google Earth, so sometimes we'll get a submission request from an HOA. They want to see a layout. They want to see exactly where the fence is going so that it meets all of their stipulations, whether it has to go to the back corners or it can go no more than 50%. Those are two of the most common in our area. They want to see the layout. And so the Google Earth gives them a really good view of here's the exact house that we're talking about. Here's exactly where the fence is going. What it does nicely, too, is so in that example, let me pull it back up. So in this example, you can see there's an existing fence here. So what we would do is we'd provide this image and say, all right, so the existing fence layout is here. This is an exact replacement of that fence. We're not going any further. We're not going any further forward or backwards. The gate isn't changing. It's literally the same thing as what's there. And so it gives the HOA a little bit better feeling for exactly what's going on in relation to the property and in relation to other properties around that house. Great question, Divine. Appreciate it. Guys, if you have fence questions, drop them in the comments below. If you're just joining us, welcome. Drop a comment. Say hi and let me know where you're from. We'd like to know where in this wide world of fence you're coming from. I'd like to see how far and wide the fence family reaches. Candace, our retail rock star, says, I missed talking about me. Guess I need to rewind. Started week of Christmas and definitely excited to join the team. Good employers are hard to come by. You guys have been amazing to work with. Well, Candace, don't make me blush on live YouTube. Come on now. No, I mean, in all seriousness, we're a family, right? We're a team of rock stars, and that's not me tooting my own horn. That's just saying that I like to surround ourselves with rock stars, right? We find someone that's really good at their specific task and what they do, and we let them do it, right? So, and by doing that, we provide rock star service for our clients. And rock stars like working with other rock stars too. A players like working with other A players. They don't like working with B or C players because then they feel like they're pulling the slack, or they might be working more than others. And anyway, we like surrounding ourselves by rock stars, and Candace is most certainly one of them. Candace, thank you. All right, guys, we're caught up with the comments, I believe. Let me scroll through here. Oh, we got one more. For horizontal fence, what are the best options for posts? Well, so you can use a wood post. A lot of guys and gals that build wood horizontal fence build it out using wood post. Because then you can use a fence picket. So what usually happens is they'll use a 4x4 or 4x6 wood post. Sometimes they'll use a 6x6 wood post. They'll space the posts 6 foot on center, so they can use a 6-foot fence picket. They'll then nail the picket up. Then they'll take a second picket and run it vertically so that it covers the seams. Kind of gives it a nice finished look. Some guys will then add cap and trim to the top. I think that looks very nice when you do that way. It gives it a really nice finished look. So they'll use wood post. When we build it with steel post. We use the steel Postmaster post. But when you do that, the trade-off is then you have to use fence picket, or you cannot use fence pickets because you have to screw through the post into the product. So we have to use a 2x. I love using 2x8s, 6s, and 4s and kind of either mixing and matching, or as I said before, my favorite is to use 2x8s on the bottom, 2x6s in the middle, and space 2x4s at the top. I think visually it looks really neat. It's interesting to the eye. It adds a lot of texture to the fence. Visually, it's really nice. But for the options for posts, are going to be wood and steel. I say steel is the best option. The Postmaster, I believe the other ones are warranted for life. They've got lifetime limited warranties. The limited portion is that if it gets hit by an asteroid or a bus drives through it, they're not warranted for that, of course, but they're warranted for rust and corrosion. So if this thing ever fails due to rust or corrosion, then they'll pay to replace it. Which with wood post, you can use a 6x6, ground contact treated, or you can use cedar or redwood. Typically, now redwood post, you get better rot resistance and also insect resistance, but ultimately at some point, it's an organic product, right? So it's going to decay, whether it's rot or insects, it's going to decay. Like if we're talking about treated pine, it's likely going to warp or twist, where cedar is going to, or steel rather, is going to, resist both of those. It's not going to warp or twist. It's got the lifetime warranty against corrosion. I would prefer to use a steel post, but as we saw, Matthew used redwood post. So used by 4x, and I like that he used 4x6. So it's a nice improvement over 4x4. It gives you a little bit more mass there to give you a little bit more wind load. Also prevents warping and twisting as well, because you just have more mass there. Also, 2 galvanized posts, probably on his gate post, which I like that move a lot. Gates themselves. Now, the latest survey they did was 2019, but the number one callback on fences in the United States nationwide were gates, either warping or twisting, and basically they wouldn't function correctly. So I would say most of them were probably dragging the ground. That's a pretty common thing, is gates sag, but also warping and twisting, just not aligning correctly. Just because the wood posts don't stay straight. They're going to move a little bit because they are an organic product. Say that a few times fast. Yeah. So I like the fact that you use galvanized posts on his gates. Big Body World, what is up? Welcome to the stream. It's going to be using Postmaster post for the first time next week, and tips for the first time user. I have many years doing wood posts, also gate poles. How difficult is the process? Thanks, Jeff. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you for your question. Appreciate it. So on the Postmaster post, they're pretty straightforward. They really are, especially you have experience using wood post. So likely the same process you use to set the string line or straight line of the post. Usually it's a string line. Some guys use cabling. Cabling probably makes sense because it doesn't stretch or bow. However you use your straight line for your post is likely going to be the same thing, same way. We use, if you're looking at the Postmaster post, you've got 2 flanges and it has a top hat feature, right? So we usually have this top hat feature face out or face the finish side. For us, the finish side typically faces out. But yeah, that's pretty much. It's pretty straightforward. If you have experience building fence, it's going to feel a lot the same. You're gonna drill the same fence post hole. You're gonna drill it the same depth. You're gonna set it in the same way. We prefer using concrete. Yeah. Now I don't have a lot of experience, so you're probably using a Postmaster Plus post, which is the post that Master Alco is currently selling. And they do have gate poles. Now, we don't use their gate posts. We use a 2 3/8 galvanized round post because that accommodates our hardware, our mounting hardware. The shark hinge hardware we use is from a company called Forney Fence down in Texas, and it's made to mount on a round 2 3/8 round post. So we don't use their corners or end posts. So I guess that's one thing is you can use their line post for the whole fence. Even so, the original Postmaster post, they didn't have a gate post or an end post, whichever you'd like to call it. So for a gate post, what they would do is you would weld 2 of the line posts together where the top hat is facing out on both sides. So you'd weld that together, and then that would become your gate post. You'd have to cut down some 2x4s into 2x2s or 1.5 by 1.5. And fix those either side. That way you have a place to mount your pickets, and you would use that for your gate post. I didn't like that plan. Well, and mainly it didn't accommodate for the hardware. So we use 2.5 inch or 2 3/8 galvanized CS40 8-foot posts. So the biggest thing I could say is just take your time with it. The layout's going to be a lot the same. We still do 8 foot on center. That means we're going to cut off a few inches of each 2x4. So you'll have a battery powered circular saw or something to cut those 2x4s with. Also, you're going to need a bandsaw, a metal cutting bandsaw to cut the tops of your post. We like to leave the post up a little bit. That way we can roll the 2x4s with the terrain and then cut the tops of the Postmaster posts at the top of the 2x4. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot the same. I mean, bravo on using them. I like using the Postmaster steel post just because it's a solid product. They're easy to use. The Postmaster Plus post now has more holes in the flange. That was our only gripe with the Postmasters, is the holes were a little bit spaced out that you would screw through the post into the 2x4s. The Postmaster posts now have more holes in them. They also have countersunk holes so that your screw head doesn't protrude outside that flange. It actually seats inside the flange, so your 2x4 can sit nice and flush, and your cover picket also sits nice and flush. Yep. All right. Take your time with it, honestly. I mean, if you've got fence experience, it's going to make perfect sense once you lay it out and start using it. The first one takes longer just because you're learning more about it. But, yeah. What is the price point on the Shark Gate hardware? Great question. It adds... I'd have to go back. I'd have to go look at our books just to make sure that I'm not totally out of line. I want to say it adds $60 to $75 a gate. I want to say the hinge setup is something around $50. The latch side's about $25, and that's me going off the top of my head. We haven't compared price point on that product in quite a while. They haven't actually. It's one of the few products, knock on wood, that hasn't gone up in post-pandemic pricing. But I want to say it adds $60, $75, somewhere in that ballpark. The problem is they have to ship freight. So you have to order quite a few hinges and latches to make the freight make sense. Just because freight is expensive to get it shipped to you. That's the only problem with the Forney fence. That's the only negative feedback I've gotten when I'm recommending them is the freight's expensive. So if you just need 2 or 3 gates, it's probably cost prohibitive to do that. But if you're a fencing contractor that's installing them quite a lot, so we just placed an order today, 50 hinges, and I want to say they had 20 singles and 20 double gate latches still left available. So we went ahead and ordered what they had. When you start ordering in quantity, the shipping is more manageable. All right. So Brandon, we're talking about the screws. Brandon says, stop digging ground screws. Let's Google this real quick and see what we're talking about here. Actually, let's Google it here. We'll all Google it together. Stop digging ground screws. All right. Let me switch this to screen share. Make me little. There we go. I'm going to say stop digging ground screws. There we go. Number 2 result on Google. Okay, yeah. So these are actually similar. All right, let me go back real quick because these are similar to. This isn't exactly what I was talking about, but this is pretty similar to what we saw several years ago. With it has a screw portion that goes down on the ground that has a flange that the 4x4 attaches to. Now let's pull up that website. So yeah, I guess let's see. Try to find a good picture of one of these. Yeah, so they look pretty similar. These right here look pretty similar to actually. So this flange is quite a bit taller than the ones that we had used in the past. There you go. This is more like. This is almost identical to the ones that we had seen before. The difference being, so this only has, so it's like a U, right? So it has 2 sides of that post. The other one it was an enclosed, so you had to buy them 4x4, 6x6, well, 5.5 by 5.5. These look significantly heavier, beefier. The flanges themselves do. So it looks like Yeah, it looks like they just screw down into the ground. I'd like to see the installation process. So, okay. Well, I guess you pre-drill. This is a hammer drill, a rotary hammer. So you pre-drill, but then how does this work? Let's try to try to see this thing in action. I mean, this makes sense, right? Screws down in the ground. Um, I want to see this thing get installed though. Oh, so that's interesting. They're so this is a little beaver. Well, when it's an auger, it's called a little beaver. This is actually what we use to set fence posts. For quite a while, we use these to dig the holes for the fence post. I guess they'd have an adapter on it though that would drive these things in the ground. I want to see these things go. Note to the Stop Digging Company. Show me how to install these things. All right. What can screw support? Standard lightweight. Oh, what can it support? I want to see how deep can it go. That's a good question. We use span tables. Well, it's not telling. This doesn't really answer the question how deep they go. Well, I guess it depends. So it's saying we would ask how high above ground level the deck is proposed so we can specify the correct length of ground. Okay. Depends on the load. That's a good question. Can you use in hard or soft ground? We'd pre-drill hard stone for fixing a normal screw. We always drill a pilot hole. So that's what we saw with that rotary hammer drill. Before installing our ground screws in tricky terrain, forces smaller stones or gravel aside. Makes sense. How do we install the screw? There we go. All year round. Okay. Developed cope. That's fine. Well, that doesn't answer the question. How do we install it? It just says how they're developed. Feel free to ask your local installer who has a specialist knowledge. So it's probably not an American business, which is fine. I want to see how you install these things. So, Brandon, have you used these screws? I mean, have you installed these? I'll spend just a couple more minutes digging around on this, but I want to know how these things were installed. Like, how do we drive this thing? How do you set this thing in the ground? So that's a good question. Do they settle? So they can be affected by settling. That's fine. I mean, you account for that, right? Um, Another good question. How much do they cost? We offer fixed price. Our prices vary depending on which screw. Okay. But they don't tell you how they don't tell you how much. So that's always another thing that makes me nervous. If they don't tell you how much, it's probably going to be spendy. Yeah, so here's the thing is show me how to use these things. They're obviously sold they've obviously got a huge market here. Oh, okay, wait. There's a picture of it. So, yeah, so they're using this ground, it's called not a ground, called a little beaver. Let's look. That's funny. They've they've bought a little. Well, they bought the design for a little beaver, and then modified it for theirs. But I mean, that's almost identical. Let me do this. I'm gonna open up a different tab real quick. You guys are still gonna look at that one, but let me. Actually, not little beaver. So must be groundhog. Yeah, groundhog. So let me share this one with you guys. Let me just do this. So let me share a different screen with you. So these are what we use, these Groundhog augers are what we used just all the time. Let me just search which, if you guys are just starting out, these diggers are really nice. Well, what's funny is, so that company, the ground screw company, took this design and basically, instead of having an auger on it, they just have a mount for their, the stop drilling screw. So that's kind of, but they rebranded it. They took other Groundhog branding off and they put the stop digging branding on it. All right. I mean, I don't know. So, Brandon, to answer your question, I obviously don't have experience with it. I'd certainly like to hear experience with it. I'm always open to different ideas, different suggestions. The thing with it, the pro to this would be, or the benefit to this would be, you could use it immediately. The downside would be, so the first iteration of this, and I don't remember what they were called, but they were pretty weak. They had issues with the post. I want to say is those flanges, the U flange. They had problems with it failing. So the thing is with a deck. So those are obviously made for decks. So the deck has a lot of just vertical pressure. It's not moving horizontally very much. It shouldn't be. It's mainly just keeping it in place, keeping it from sinking. I mean, it gets a little bit of horizontal load, but most of it's vertical load. With a fence, you're getting mostly horizontal load. I mean, it's holding the fence up, but with wind load, if you, depending on where in the world you are, if you get decent winters, ice is going to be a concern. If you get a heavy ice accumulation on the fence and then you get wind load, are those flanges going to be strong enough to hold that? I'd be interested to learn more. I'd have some questions about it. Big Guy, you're very welcome. Appreciate you sticking around with us. So Divine says, do your crews use string lines for setting posts and also sight them in, or do your crews just sight them in Mark did a good video? Yeah. So I liked Mark's video. In our process, we use string lines just because. So when Mark's sighting in a post, Mark does a lot of big agricultural projects. I mean, he's talking about lines that are thousands of feet long, which granted, you're not going to sight in thousands of feet, but they're pretty big projects. Predominantly, so we're a mix 50-50 between residential and commercial. We don't typically do any agricultural work. So our lines, we're talking about a line that's, I don't know, 100 foot or less. So for us, string lines make sense. It's the way our process is. I mean, it's the process that we teach, right? So I like Mark's way of doing it. I think it's great. We use string lines just because we're not talking about, if we were talking about lines that were, 200-300 feet, a string line wouldn't make sense because you'd start getting bowing in that. If it's a windy day, you'll have to keep an eye on the string line, make sure it stays nice and tight, or else it's going to blow out. But in our process, we use string lines. It works for our process. And guys, that's the thing. It is, and actually, Jeremy and I just got done on Tuesday recording the intro video for the channel. If you guys watch some of the earlier videos, it's realistically the same type of intro that you guys are used to seeing. It's basically me just saying, hey, I'm a third generation fencer. I learned, that I've learned from, the methods and information that my grandfather passed down to my father that passed down to me. There are always more than one way to build a fence, but this is my family's way that I'd like to share with you. Mark's way is great. I think it's excellent. If I were starting out, I would probably heavily consider using Mark's method of sighting in a post. Once your company is established and has a training procedure, has just a training method of teaching new guys to build fence, it gets a little bit more difficult to introduce a totally different way of sighting in a post. For us, a string line works because a string line is a string line. Your eyeballs can get off, right? Depending on how you're looking at this. A string line can't get off as long as it's tight. It can get off for the wind, but we can teach that. We use a string line. But I want to be careful to say Mark's idea is really great. I mean, his way of doing it is solid. It's very solid. If I were a new contractor, I would likely consider using that over using a string line. But for us, we've got a method in place of teaching new guys how to build fence. Looks like Groundhog. Yeah, Groundhog towable auger. I'm assuming there's an attachment that attaches to your auger and then to unbolt it off. That's that's the thing is when I think back, I haven't used a Groundhog auger in quite a long time. But I think it's a solid shaft that comes out of that motor that's on top of that. There's a drive head there for the auger. I think it's solid. So you might either bolt in an adapter or maybe they've just completely modified, probably what's more likely because the design's a little bit different on that as well. I would almost bet they redesigned that driver head to be a solid, probably a 4x4 mount that drives that thing. I would be really interested to see. So, Brandon's going to be sending a video. I'd love to see that. So, Brandon, why don't you share that with us over on the Facebook page? So it's facebook.com/The Real Joe Everest. Let me type that in the comments for you guys. So Facebook is a great place where we can share back and forth pictures and videos. YouTube doesn't let you guys post on my page. So that's not great. Even in the communities tab, we create a Facebook page is there. It is facebook.com/The Real Joe Everest. If you go to facebook.com/Joe Everest, it'll probably take you to my personal page, which is not the right page. You would search for The Real Joe Everest, and that would take you to our public page where we can talk about photos and videos. Brandon, I would love to see that video. So I'd asked if he uses them. He said yes. So Brandon, do you use them to build fence? So the use cases I saw on that website were more for, it looked like they were specifically for deck foundations, deck piers. So I'd be interested to hear if you use them for fences and what do those things cost? That was going to be the next thing. Is it a great idea? Absolutely. It looks like if it'll hold up a deck, it'll likely hold up a fence. I'd be worried about the horizontal load placed on these, typically under wind load, especially in an icy condition. Yeah. Have you personally installed them for fence? I'd really like to know. How many bad jokes? Actually, I skipped another question. I'll come back up to your question, Jay. How many bad jokes have you heard about your profession versus sword fighting sport? Not a lot of jokes about it, I guess. I don't know. You can make a joke out of it, I suppose. So this came up when we were talking about this title or this page, this YouTube channel's name. So Joe Everest, the fence expert. So I'm following the lead. I'm following the lead of Roger Wakefield, the expert plumber. Right. This guy is he's a plumber in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that does an incredible job at social media marketing. He's got a YouTube page that is phenomenal. It's massive. He provides a lot of great content. And so he and I met each other at Social Media Marketing World initially. And I was blown away with what he was up to here on YouTube. And so he and I chatted for a little while and we had a few dinners. Him and Will, we had a lot of good conversations. And he's like, brother, you guys start a YouTube channel. He said, you're like me. You're out here trying to help people learn more about your trade and trying to elevate your trade by trying to, help these guys and gals. You need a YouTube. You can do this at scale. And so anyway, so he's the expert plumber. So I was like, well, the expert fencer probably is going to lead to a little bit confusion because I don't do the sport of fencing at all. It's not common in the Midwest at all. So that's going to lead to some confusion. But as far as jokes, I don't have any jokes regarding the sword fighting version of fencing. Jay asks, is it worth cutting your own French Gothic posts and pickets for your own business? Not unless you're doing a lot of them, in my experience. If you're a company that builds a ton of French Gothic posts, French Gothic picket fencing where you have a ton of posts and pickets to cut, it probably makes sense. But if you do one or two projects a month, I don't think financially it makes any sense to cut your own. They do charge more for that from the manufacturer, but unless you're doing, one or two projects a week of this, I don't think it makes financial sense at all for the time and effort and equipment you would have to buy. to cut these well and make sure they're consistently cut the same. I don't see that making financial sense at all. I would, when we do French Gothic projects occasionally, we always pay the manufacturer to cut them. Just they're set up for it. They've got the machinery already. They've got a process, and when they show up to me, they're already done. They're all consistently, the same, and we can just get going with it. Bo says he would not trust the mounting of the post to hold the load of the fence. Yeah, that's a problem, right? Let me look this back up again. Just to kind of show exactly what my concern is here. And I think it's probably the same concern all of you guys have, or at least Bo has. So let me share my screen with you guys again. Like I said, once I learn a new trick, guys, I am all about using it over and over again. We're going to be doing a lot of screen shares, I have a feeling. So let's get a good picture of one of these. So like in this picture, it's holding up stairs, but it's a vertical load, right? These stairs aren't moving horizontally. They shouldn't be. They should be built in such a way where they're not moving horizontally. There's not a horizontal load. Let's see what they say for building fences. So it's, I mean, they say it's for fence, but my concern here is when you put a post in here, it's going to have a horizontal load, right? So the top is going to want to move. I would be concerned there's not a lot of support there to prevent the horizontal movement of that fence. I would be really concerned with that. But they address it here. So it says fences are heavily exposed to wind, rain, disturbed with plants and trees. Post screws of different sizes and heads for attaching a wide variety. Wooden posts are usually 4 by 4 inch lumber, placed 6 to 8 feet apart. We recommend that you select pressure treated lumber. I just agree with that. I mean, if you're already at the cost of one of these things, which is probably significant, you might as well use a cedar post. I mean, you could use a treated pine, but I don't know. It'd be putting, I don't know. These things are probably going to be expensive. Stainless steel screws, other things for long-term durability. When it comes to the fence design, Google can help. All right. And it just says, call us on how best to get your ground screws installed. I don't know. I would be worried about this just because, like I said, the horizontal load on one of these has to be immense, and I don't see it. I really don't. So this is interesting. This is, I don't know what this is. Maybe, so there's a bar across here, so maybe that's used to turn it, but then she's got some sort of, looks like a ram of some sort, but surely you're not driving it up and down. I mean, you've got to twist this thing, right? I don't know, but then they have like that little groundhog auger there with, yeah, it does look like it's got just a special head on it. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm the same. I have the same mind as Bo. I'm not sure I put a lot of faith in that holding a horizontal load. Maybe it's worth testing. I mean, I could probably reach out to see what the price on one of these things is and give it a try. I don't know what the installation method on one of these things would be though. I mean, this guy on the right, he's got some sort of handheld. What is that? Some sort of handheld. See, it looks like a RAM driver of some sort, but then it has this bar coming off of it. So, but I don't understand this installation at all. This guy's walking around with a rotary hammer, so that makes sense because they drill a pilot hole. But then, like, how do you actually install the things? Like, if you're doing a one-off installation, I don't know. I would certainly like to see the video of this thing installed. We're here on YouTube. Maybe we should search YouTube for a video of this thing being installed. Let me go through some comments here. If we don't get some feedback, we might just try to search a YouTube video of this, huh? Jay, you're very welcome. I'm always happy to help you guys as much as possible. If you guys have fencing questions, drop them in the comments below. We still have, what time is it? So it's 5 o'clock here in the Midwest Central Standard Time. So I've got about a half hour left here. I've got a pretty hard out right around 5:30. I've got a visitation to go to, unfortunately. So you don't want to be late to those. 108. Does this? All right. So this is probably asked to quit. These things cost $100 each. Is that $108 for one of these anchors? If that's $108 per each, there's absolutely zero chance that is worth it. I mean, for a typical installation, I mean, what 30 well, for let me do math here real quick because I don't, typical installation of a couple hundred, 250 feet is going to be roughly 30 of these plus some gate posts. So you're going to spend $3,000 on these posts plus the posts to go on top of them. I'm not spending $108 on a mounting hardware. There is zero chance of that happening. Now I understand it like in a deck scenario, maybe because you're not. I mean, a deck has less than a dozen of these. For it probably depends on the size of the deck, but man, 30 of these for a yard fence. I don't see that happening at all. If it's $108 per each, there is zero chance of that happening. I mean, the value, right? I mean, that's what Brandon's asking. He's doing a fence next month, but want to see if the cost is worth the speed. I don't think the value of these things, there's no way these things provide $108 worth of value per each, if that's the per each price. Brandon, I think that would be a significant waste of money. I mean, that's oof. No, I mean, I don't see that at all. I'm trying to find a way to justify it. Maybe, if there's a certain scenario that might justify that cost, but I cannot come up with one, bud. I really don't. If it's 108 a piece, I don't see that at all. Should do a video with the stop digging. Yeah, so that's the thing is I want to figure out how I want to find a video on this. I want to see other people do it real quick. So this is all, so let's do stop digging ground through, but then we'll add video to the end of it. So we'll see. All right. So let's see. Let's see if this one winds up with a video of the actual installation. Some of those look like we're just, is it worth it sort of things. So use a rotary hammer for the pilot holes. I get that. Oh, so that's it. Oh, okay. So the pole goes between your legs to keep that thing from spinning on you. But that looks like a pretty specialized tool that's driving that thing. It's a rotary drill of some sort, electric rotary drill. How would you install one of them? Like, I wouldn't go buy that piece of equipment just for installing one, right? Is there? Let's see what this guy has to say. So he's using these screws. Now he's using a different flange head on it, though, right? I want to see him install it. That is a massive screw, almost as tall as he is. So I don't know how tall he is, but All right, so let's talk about this for a second. So they're getting ready to do a vertical pull test, right? Um, so this is some feedback I got with the original foam video. Is they said, well, you should see how much, how much weight it would take to, or how much strength it would take to pull one of those things out of the ground. I want to know what the real world application of a vertical pull test is in this scenario, right? So, in regards to fence, a vertical pull test might simulate a tornado, maybe trying to pull this thing out of the ground. Or like, so Mark, I think it was Mark that was talking about vertical pull test, roughly the same thing. He's like, I get, if the Earth lost gravitational pull, maybe it's simulating that. Vertical pull tests don't mean just a whole lot when it comes to fencing. I don't think. I mean, I could be wrong, but there's not a lot of vertical pull pressure when we're talking about a fence. So they're going to use a hydraulic jack to try to pull this thing out of the ground. That's fine. I want to see the installation of it. All right, so use a rotary hammer. They're drilling a pilot hole. Okay. Yeah. That's what I want to see. Okay, so he's got one of these tools too. So obviously it's going to need a specialized tool to screw this thing into the ground. But it looks like he has one of those modified groundhog digger, auger. Use a couple levels, make sure it's plumb. Yeah, I guess he's not using one of the groundhogs. It looked kind of like that from that angle, but so I don't think I'm going to do one to test on these just because I don't have one of those pieces of machinery, and I'm not going to go buy one just for a video, especially if these things are $108 a piece. Yeah. So Divine's kind of got same opinion. It's not worth the cost at $108. No way. Yeah. So, an average project is 30 holes. So that'd be $3,000, 35 holes, $3,500. It'd be, and that's before now, if you're in the DIY crowd, there's no markup. But if you're a contractor, you've got to mark that up to account for the costs associated with you bringing that in and handling it, storing it, and etc. So by the time you marked it up, it'd be even more than that. I mean, you're talking about, I don't know, that'd be wildly overpriced for a fence. Now, these probably have a place in decks or something like that. Okay, but when we're talking about a fence, there's no way. There's no way that cost justifies that at all. But that's one guy's opinion, right? That's just my opinion. So don't if you think it's good value, then by all means. But if you're asking a fence guy if I'd spend $108 per post for that, plus, I mean, it's not just $108, right? So you're going to have to buy that equipment. You can't install that with common tools, it seems like. So you're going to have to buy either that adapted groundhog auger or whatever those rotary the rotary. They weren't rotary hammer because it didn't sound like it was hammering it. The rotary drive, whatever those are that are screwing those things to the ground, you got to buy that equipment. Typically purpose built equipment is not inexpensive. You can't simply just go to the rental store and rent one. I don't see the value in it. I honestly don't. If I'm missing something, let me know. I mean, I would be happy to consider it, but I don't think we're going to do a video with that if it takes all that specialized equipment, because I'm not willing to buy now. If it was for one of these YouTube videos, could I justify buying two of them at $100 a piece? Probably. It would make good video content, but then if we're also buying the equipment on top of it to try to do a video just for the video, because I couldn't see us installing those as a business. So I'd literally be buying it just for that video. It starts becoming pretty unreasonable. I don't think we'll be doing one of those. I agree with Divine. That's a lot for a ground screw. When when the cost of digging a hole, Divine, what do you think the cost of digging a hole is? I mean, the concrete's $4 a bag if you're going to use concrete. So a couple bags, you're $8 in concrete. I mean, maybe $15 a hole labor cost. I'm trying to do math in my head real quick. I mean, maybe $15 a hole. $20 maybe, depends on what the labor rates are in your area, but maybe $20 a hole. So if you're all in at round up $30 a hole to dig it versus $108 to use one of these, I don't see that at all. I really don't. But it's a neat idea though. Yeah, that is absolutely insane. But here's the thing though. I mean, it's obviously purpose made for another product, right? Or another purpose. It looks like it's initially made for decks, for building decks. So I get it for that. If we're talking deck supports, I mean, how many supports does a deck commonly have? I mean, it varies by deck, I'm sure, but 6 or 8 are probably common. So, if we're talking about $600 or $800, okay, well, maybe then we have a conversation about it because, you can use it the same day. You don't have to wait for concrete to cure. Of course, if you're using a foam product, you don't either. I saw another. I forget what the name of it was, but there's another product that's used for decks. That's basically, I'm going to do a horrible job of explaining this, but it's basically a pyramid base with the top cut off where you can put a post in it, a pyramid base, and then you run like it looked like 1-inch rods through it. Right, each face of this 4-sided pyramid, it has a pre-drilled hole for 1-inch rods. You drive these down into the earth, in crisscross patterns, and I think they're like 4 foot long. So you're driving these things in the ground. The idea being, this thing's not coming up. It's a pure drive at that point. But using for decks, I saw it at a home show. I think one of the international home shows, maybe. Who knows what that thing cost anyway, too. I mean, I always get nervous when the manufacturers aren't forthcoming with what these things cost. Well, we bid it per project, and it really varies per application, and it's going to be expensive. If you can't tell me, hey, these things are $100 a piece, and they're a value because of X, Y, or Z, makes me nervous when you don't tell me how much they cost. Have you used or found a surface mount plate for a 4x4 post that provides sufficient support? It's been something that we've tried to make work a few times now with no success. I haven't, Bo. There's a version of these vertical drive screws that I assume it failed. It popped up and went away pretty quickly. There's another version of these. It's a spike essentially. It's like, I want to say this thing's like 2 foot long. It's a spike, right? It's a 4-sided spike. It looks like a big tent stake that you drive down into the ground that then has a pocket for the post to sit in. Actually, I think we did a reaction video on it. I'll have to go back and look. I'm not sure if we posted that or not. I remember doing a reaction video on it, but basically you drive it. I think you drive it with a jackhammer, if I remember right. There's an adapter that goes in a jackhammer, and you drive these things in the ground. What was it? I want to say it's OZ Post. Let's look it up real quick. OZ Post anchor. The only reason I remember is because Ozark Fence. Our website is OZ Fence for Ozark Fence. So I was like, OZ Post, OZ Fence. I could market that, right? Let me share the screen with you guys again. Like I said, teach me a trick. I'm going to do it over and over. We're going to start seeing a lot more screen shares. I have a feeling. So this one on the left, it's the OZ Post anchors. So these things, I did a review on these. See if this is the actual website for it rather than the Home Depot website. Yeah, so this is pretty similar to the one I saw. It's probably exactly the one I saw, but Yeah, so like this one's 27 inches. This one's 24 inches. They're for a 4x4 post, a 3.5 by 3.5. You drive these things in the ground and then put the post in here, in this pocket. So let me see. So these guys actually have it figured out. I mean, they've got testing. They've got testing, all the testing data you'd want to see, technical evaluation reports and such. I guess you could buy the testing. Is that what this is? You could buy the testing certificate. The certification is sold as an engineered sealed evaluation report. Oh, okay. So this is for if you're submitting this on a project, they want to see engineered data. So this is, you could buy the certification report. But so it's interesting to know that they've done that homework at least, to see. Oh, I guess so. I went to a different screen. So basically, it didn't share that screen with you guys. So basically, it took me to a separate website that was, you could buy the engineered certifications for that. So this is interesting. Let's see if they show us the installation of this videos. I bet that'll do it. Maybe. See if they show. I want to see the installation. Show me how to install these things, right? Post extenders are interesting. That's kind of an interesting thought. All right, show me how to install it. All right, so that one doesn't show us how to actually install it. I want you to show me how to install this thing. So they don't really show us how to install it. The way I saw a guy install it was with a jackhammer. It had an adapter. This is kind of interesting. A post adapter. So let's. So a post extender, that'd be kind of an interesting thought, right? Because that's always the question we get is, how do you extend a fence post that's already set? If you've got a 4-foot chain link fence, how can you make it a 5-foot? And I haven't found a great solution for that. Maybe the Osco folks have done it. So this might be an interesting thought. Jeremy, if you're, as we're watching this in a recording, let's add that to our list. I mean, I think this would be interesting to do a video on this, comparing that and doing some testing, seeing how well a fence panel holds up in that. Kind of a different thought. Yep, Bo, this is exactly what I'm thinking. Does it meet our standards of sturdiness for support when we're talking about horizontal loads? Is it going to keep this fence straight? I mean, we're always learning, right? We're always trying to find new techniques, and if that thing is, I think it's cost effective. What do we see? So let's go back. Yeah, so the $24 at Home Depot. So $24, we're probably having a conversation, right? If we're saying it costs about $30 to set a post, to dig and set a post, and then you got to wait for the concrete to cure. And I'm probably ballparking that a little high at $30. But if one of these things is $25, we're at least in the ballpark of having a conversation about it. It'd be worth it. I think it'd be worth at least try to do a video on it. Jeremy, let's add that to our list of videos to try out. Okay, yeah. So Divine, yeah, 20, 30 a hole. The Ozpost is the other. They get priced as well. Okay. So if I was reading the comments, Divine already told me they're Ozpost. Do you have your work truck set up for sites that do not have water source? And if so, what do you use? Yeah. So what we typically do, it depends on the job size. But we do have a couple 100-gallon water tank. We can put all of our, the installation trucks are flatbed trucks. So we can put a 200-gallon water tank on the back of that flatbed truck and fill her up. Usually a couple hundred gallons will do most all of the post installations. If it's a large commercial job, we contract the water supply out. Contracting water gets expensive. I didn't consider how costly it would be till the first bid we put out for contracting water. It was a big commercial project. We couldn't get a pre-mix truck out there just because of the terrain. We couldn't get anywhere close. There was no water on the project, so we had to contract water. It was incredibly expensive. So 200-gallon water tank on the back of the truck costs a lot less money. And then if we need to, that truck can make trips back and forth to a water source, whether it's our office or we'll pay someone a little bit if we can access their water. But yeah, so that's kind of our process. 200-gallon water tank typically does the trick. Thank you, Divine Fence. If I learned a trick, I'm going to use it. So I'm glad to hear the screen share is working well for other folks. A plate mounted to a concrete, other flat surface at the. Okay. I'm sorry, Bo. Yeah. So they make those. Where do we order those from? I'll have to double check. It might be Master Halco. It's one of our supply houses. So our main suppliers are Master Halco, Merchants Metals, and Stephen Pipe and Steel. Are kind of the three nationwide ones. We've got some more regional guys we deal with too. I don't think it's one of the nationwide guys that we buy them from, but yeah, so they're essentially depending on the size, 3.5 by 3.5, 5.5 by 5.5. And then we use so you'll pre-drill the holes. Then we use Tapcon concrete anchors. It takes 4 of those per post to mount this flange to the whatever concrete surface we're mounting to. Then the post slips in and we screw into that. Which is essentially, I guess, when I'm thinking this through, when I'm talking this out, it's the same process as that Oz post as far as affixing it to it. So it probably works well. I'm just kind of talking this out as we're live here. So anyway, yes, there is. Let's do this. I'll look it up and I'll add that to the comments, or we'll talk about it next week's live on where we source those things from. They're pretty slick. They work well. Okay. So I think Divine answered Simpson Strong Tie. So that's probably that sounds right. I don't want to say that's exactly what we do when it might not be. I'll let you guys know in next week's video. At different receivers. That makes sense. Big Mozzie, welcome. Build with straight at top and gap at bottom, or build with landscape. What is best? So that's a big question, and it is probably going to vary project to project depending on the customer. We'll typically give them the option. I prefer to build straight at the top and then fill in the bottom. I think it looks better at the end of the day. Your eye looks for straight edges and corners. So when you see a top that's not exactly straight, you might not personally pick up on it, but it's going to nag at you. You're going to think something doesn't look right here. This looks off, because your eye looks for straight top, 90-degree corners and straight level lines. I like straight tops. Now, if it's heavy terrain, we build with the terrain, or if the customer has small dogs and doesn't have any intention in filling in the bottom, the gaps left by building straight at the top, that will follow terrain. But my opinion is I like to build it with straight tops, then have the customer or someone else come in behind and fill in those gaps at the bottom. Well, guys, we're about 2 minutes away from 5:30. I've got a really hard out at 5:30. Like I said, I've got to go to a visitation tonight, so not something I'd like to be late to. So we have a pretty hard out. So we've got about 2 minutes left. If you guys have any last minute questions, drop them in the comments below. If not, I really appreciate you guys sticking it out with me and showing up every week. You guys being a part of this broadcast means a lot to me. You guys give me a lot of good content, a lot of good things to talk about. I ask a lot of great questions that I really appreciate. I think we covered some great topics today and gave me a few ideas to put up on the board on videos, on upcoming videos to actually record for you guys and add to the channel. So I appreciate that a lot. This channel, I feel like this channel is as much for you guys as it is for me. I'm simply here producing content to try to be as helpful for you guys. But, well, guys, let's do this. Let's kind of wrap it up. Call it a day. I don't see any other new comments. So If you guys do have any questions, if you're watching this as a recorded video, leave them in the comments below, and I'll bring them up in next week's video. Also, we'll probably add them to our whiteboard directly off screen here, where we'll add them to our recorded video segments and have it as permanent content for you guys to watch and hopefully learn from. But guys, I appreciate you coming in and tuning in, hanging out with me every week. It means a lot to me. I enjoy seeing you guys every week. I can't wait to see you guys next week. We do these Ask an Expert live Q&As every Thursday from 3 to 5:30 Central. And until next week, guys, I'm Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors. I'll see you guys next week.